High above the dark current-swept waters of the Orava River rises Orava Castle, a fortress that appears less constructed than grown from the living. Limestone beneath it, perched dramatically on a vertical cliff in northern Slovakia. This medieval stronghold commands the valley with an authority shaped by centuries of war, politics, and survival. For global audiences, the castle is inseparable from Nosferatu, the silent era masterpiece that immortalized its silhouette. As the lair of Count Orlok, yet beyond its cinematic shadow lies a far deeper story, one carved into rock, layered in stone, and preserved through turbulent European history. What is truly inside? This fortress is not merely a setting for horror, but a complete medieval ecosystem of defense, administration, faith, and adaptation. Its foundations were laid in the 13th century, following the Mongol invasions that devastated Central Europe, when King Balifor of Hungary initiated a vast program of stone castle construction across the Kingdom of Hungary. The goal was clear: replace vulnerable, wooden fortifications with enduring stone citadels positioned at strategic trade routes and river crossings. Orava Castle became one such sentinel, designed not simply to dominate the landscape, but to survive it. From its earliest incarnation, the fortress evolved vertically, rising in tiers from the cliff face in a configuration that maximized defense, while minimizing exposure. The result was a complex of 154 rooms distributed across lower, middle, and upper wards, each level progressively more secure than the last. Inside these chambers unfolded centuries of military vigilance, administrative governance, and daily human life intertwined with the harsh realities of medieval geopolitics. The lower castle formed the operational backbone of the fortress, where practical necessities sustained endurance in times of siege and peace. Alike storehouses lined with thick stone, walls preserved grain, dried legumes, and salted meats capable of feeding garrisons through prolonged blockades. Vaulted cellars maintained consistent temperatures, shielding supplies from summer heat and winter frost. Stables housed horses, essential for patrols and communication across the valley, while blacksmith workshops echoed with the rhythm of hammer against iron as tools, weapons, and armor were forged or repaired. Gates reinforced with iron bands and heavy beams created formidable entry points, designed to funnel attackers into narrow choke passages, overlooked by arrow slits and murder holes above. These architectural features were not aesthetic flourishes, but calculated responses to real threats that had once swept across the region with devastating speed. As invaders attempted ascent along the steep approach roads, defenders positioned in elevated galleries could unleash projectiles from protected vantage points. Inside the lower ward, administrative offices managed taxation, regional disputes, and logistical coordination linking surrounding settlements to the authority embodied by the castle's stone mass. Every corridor and courtyard functioned as part of a defensive network integrated seamlessly with the cliff itself. The limestone foundation served both as structural anchor and natural barrier, making large-scale siege engines nearly impossible to deploy effectively against its walls. In times of stability, the lower castle bustled with routine labor, servants transporting provisions, artisans maintaining equipment, and messengers arriving with sealed documents detailing political developments. Beyond the horizon, this dynamic interplay between preparedness and daily life reveals that what lies inside Orava Castle is not static antiquity, but a record of constant adaptation to shifting historical pressures. Ascending into the middle castle, the atmosphere transitions from utilitarian to semi-residential, spaces where authority and domesticity intertwined. Here, noble representatives and high-ranking officers occupied chambers equipped with fireplaces capable of warming thick-walled rooms during severe Carpathian winters. Gothic arches framed interior doorways, while small but carefully positioned windows allowed light to filter into corridors without compromising defensive strength. A chapel stood as spiritual center, its altar oriented according to ecclesiastical tradition and its stone vaults echoing with chants during religious observances. Faith in the medieval period was inseparable from governance, and the chapel's presence within fortified walls symbolized divine sanction reinforcing temporal authority. Walls at this level were reinforced to withstand both battering rams and emerging artillery. Technologies as gunpowder weaponry gradually transformed European warfare. Adaptations included thicker masonry sections and the introduction of rounded bastions designed to deflect cannon fire rather than absorb it directly. Storage rooms nearby housed crossbows, arrows, and later early firearms, reflecting technological transition over generations. While the lower castle sustained material survival, the middle ward balanced protection with representation. Hosting emissaries required chambers that projected stability and prestige even amid uncertainty. Ceilings crafted from seasoned timber softened the austere stone environment, and limited decorative elements hinted at Renaissance influence as centuries progressed. The middle castle thus embodies architectural evolution, responding not only to military necessity but also to cultural aspiration. Inside these halls, legal disputes were resolved, alliances negotiated, and regional policies determined, linking the fortress intimately to broader political currents. Flowing through Central Europe, the upper castle crowns the cliff like a final assertion of dominance, containing the most secure and symbolically potent spaces within the complex, accessible only through successive gates and steep stairways. It served as final refuge should outer defenses fall. Private chambers here provided relative comfort, compared to lower levels, with larger hearths, improved insulation, and commanding views of the valley below. From these vantage points, administrators could monitor trade, caravans navigating along the Orava River, and anticipate potential threats approaching through forested passes. The psychology of elevation reinforced hierarchy. Those dwelling highest literally occupied the apex of power. Within these rooms, archival documents were stored in wooden chests, detailing land grants, tax records, and diplomatic correspondence that shaped the economic landscape of the surrounding region. Although time has erased many original manuscripts, the architectural spaces remain as silent witnesses to decisions that influenced generations. In certain upper chambers, narrow, spiral staircases wind tightly within tower walls, designed to disadvantage right-handed attackers ascending upward while allowing defenders above greater freedom of movement. This subtle defensive geometry reveals strategic thinking embedded directly into circulation patterns. What appears romantic to modern visitors was once calculated survival logic. The interplay of stone, wood, and iron in these upper rooms demonstrates craftsmanship adapted to environmental constraints and available materials. Together, the three vertical wards, lower, middle, and upper, form a cohesive organism rather than isolated segments, each level supporting and reinforcing the others in a system engineered for resilience. Beneath these visible structures lies another dimension that deepens the castle's mystique: its underground passages and rock-carved tunnels. These corridors were not theatrical inventions, but pragmatic solutions to siege conditions and structural necessity. Wells dug deep into limestone ensured reliable water supply, even when external access was cut off. Some tunnels connected storage areas discreetly, allowing movement of provisions without exposing personnel to arrow fire from outside walls. Engineers exploited natural fissures in the rock, expanding them into stable passageways that simultaneously strengthened foundations and facilitated interior communication. Airflow within these subterranean spaces remains cool and steady due to thermal properties of limestone, making them ideal for preserving perishable goods. The acoustics inside these tunnels dampen sound dramatically, an effect that later filmmakers would find atmospherically compelling. During siege scenarios, such enclosed passages could serve as fallback routes or last resort escape channels, though many were carefully concealed to prevent enemy discovery. In some cases, blocked entrances visible today reflect strategic decisions made centuries ago to eliminate vulnerabilities once political. Landscapes changed. Above-ground defensive bastions extended outward from walls to eliminate blind spots, creating interlocking fields of fire against scaling. The castle's cliffside location already provided formidable natural defense, but these additional measures amplified security through redundancy. What lies inside the fortress is therefore inseparable from what lies beneath it, an intricate network of stone shaping both visible architecture and hidden support systems. Essential for survival, centuries of noble stewardship transformed the castle from purely military installation into residence reflecting evolving artistic tastes. Renaissance and later, Baroque influences introduced subtle ornamentation without compromising defensive integrity. Window frames acquired decorative flourishes. Interior walls displayed fresco remnants adding color to austere stone. Wooden galleries bridged sections of the complex, facilitating protected circulation during inclement weather. These modifications signal shifting priorities as regional stability fluctuated and warfare methods evolved. With the spread of artillery technology, walls were further reinforced and certain towers reconfigured to accommodate cannon placements. The castle thus became a chronicle of architectural response to technological change. Fire outbreaks at various points necessitated reconstruction efforts that left discernible differences in masonry coloration, providing historians with clues to chronological development. Restoration campaigns in the 19th century, driven by romantic fascination with medieval heritage, prevented large-scale decay and preserved structural authenticity. This continuity allowed the fortress to survive into the 20th century largely intact, ready to assume an unexpected new role within emerging cinematic art. When production teams arrived in 1922 to film Nosferatu, they encountered not a fabricated set but a living relic whose atmosphere required little embellishment. Director F.W. Murnau recognized that Orava Castle's asymmetrical towers and stark vertical lines embodied precisely the unsettling aesthetic he sought. The upper courtyard and staircases became integral visual elements shaping audience perception of Count Orlok's domain. Light filtering through narrow windows cast elongated shadows along rough walls, creating images that would define horror cinema for decades. Filming within authentic medieval architecture imposed logistical challenges. Equipment transported up steep paths, limited interior space restricting camera angles. Yet these constraints enhanced realism. The stone textures captured on film carried centuries of weathering impossible to replicate artificially. The castle's vertical layering translated seamlessly into narrative progression, as characters moved upward toward confrontation in spaces historically designed for defense rather than drama, though cinematic. Geography rearranged certain interior connections for storytelling purposes. The essential architectural character remained genuine. The result was a fusion of historical structure and expressionist technique that elevated the fortress from regional monument to global icon. What lies inside the castle, therefore, includes not only medieval artifacts but also intangible cinematic memory embedded in cultural consciousness. Beyond film legacy, the interior spaces reveal insights into daily life often overshadowed by dramatic associations, kitchens with expansive, hearth-supported communal meals, while adjacent pantries organized supplies according to season and preservation method. Servants' quarters, though modest, illustrate social hierarchies structured spatially within the fortress. Medical practices of the era relied on herbal remedies, stored in small apothecary niches, reflecting limited but earnest attempts at healthcare. Within isolation, children of noble households likely received instruction within private chambers, learning literacy and arithmetic skills necessary for governance responsibilities. Music and storytelling provided entertainment during long winters when snow isolated the castle from surrounding villages. These human dimensions transform the fortress from abstract monument into lived environment shaped by ordinary routines punctuated by extraordinary crises. During times of threat, however, life shifted dramatically. Gates sealed, watch rotations intensified, and rationing protocols regulated consumption to extend endurance. Lookouts stationed in towers scanned horizons for approaching forces, communicating signals through visual markers or dispatched riders. The castle's compartmentalized design allowed defenders to retreat sequentially inward, abandoning outer wards while preserving inner sanctums. This defensive psychology resonates with narrative structures later employed in horror storytelling, where characters penetrate successive barriers toward climactic revelation. Yet historically, the threats confronted here were tangible armies, political rebellions, or environmental hardship rather than supernatural entities. Modern preservation efforts have transformed Orava Castle into a museum complex balancing public access with conservation responsibility. Climate monitoring systems protect wooden beams and remaining fresco fragments from moisture damage. Subtle structural reinforcements stabilize aging masonry without compromising historical authenticity. Exhibitions contextualize weaponry, documents, and furnishings within broader European developments, connecting local history to continental shifts in trade, warfare, and governance. Guided tours trace both medieval architecture and filming locations from Nosferatu, demonstrating how one structure can embody multiple narratives simultaneously. Scholars study construction techniques evident in stone, bonding patterns, and mortar composition, gaining insight into medieval engineering practices that continue to influence restoration science. The castle thus functions as an educational platform where visitors encounter tangible intersections of geology, architecture, politics, and art. Each room contributes to a mosaic of experience spanning centuries, illustrating how built environments accumulate meaning through successive reinterpretations. Ultimately, what is truly inside Nosferatu's castle transcends Gothic fantasy. Within its walls reside centuries of adaptive engineering responding to invasion and innovation. Within its 154 rooms linger echoes of administrators, drafting decrees, soldiers maintaining vigilance, and families navigating daily routines under stone protection. Within its tunnels flow practical solutions to siege conditions carved patiently into limestone. Within its chapels reverberated prayers seeking divine favor amid uncertain times. Within its towers evolved responses to artillery and shifting military doctrine. Within its courtyards, cameras once captured shadows that redefined cinematic horror for global audiences. Orava Castle stands not merely as backdrop for a silent film, but as enduring testament to human resilience, creativity, and reinvention. Rising above the Orava River, it continues to merge landscape and architecture into a singular expression of survival across eras. What lies inside is history layered upon history, material, functional, and symbolic, each generation adding interpretation without erasing the foundations beneath. The fortress remains anchored in medieval urgency while simultaneously inhabiting modern imagination, a structure where stone preserves memory and memory reshapes stone through storytelling and scholarship alike.